Friday nights at 9 p.m., it's time to sit back, relax, and play Conspiracy Bingo with Echoplex Media. We've curated the best conspiracy theorists the internet has to offer and turned it into a live bingo game you can play for free with absolutely no prizes but bragging rights. You won't find a live stream like this anywhere else, and that's probably better for everyone else's mental health. Tune in every Friday at 9 p.m. Pacific at twitch.tv/EchoplexMedia and find our full schedule at echoplexmedia.com.
All right, everybody, welcome to Local Love. This is our last episode from the San Jose studio, moving on up to the East Bay here. I am joined by Fearful Jesuit in Dan, Arizona of the Paranoid Strain Orchestra. This is super cool because I've spoken with Fearful Jesuit about his podcast, The Paranoid Strain, and this is a little bit of a crossing of the streams here because I didn't think I'd ever find somebody with a conspiracy podcast that's also in a local band. That's pretty crazy. What's up, Fearful?
That's a weird coincidence. Yeah, that's pretty true.
It is very true. So, how you guys doing?
Oh, we're doing great.
Good.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
This is the first time we've done
the mics.
This is the first time we've done an in-studio thing.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool.
Very first time.
Very, very cool. Very cool.
We've come out of our shells.
Oh, that's great. I know it's kind of a drive down here, so thanks for making the trip.
Oh, yeah, of course. Montana isn't too far away. It's fine.
So I guess before we get started talking about the rock opera, Fearful, can you just remind everybody a little bit about your podcast?
Sure. I described the Paranoid Strain. We've been doing the show for about 6 years now as a podcast that explains conspiracy theories to normal people. My audience is not conspiracy theorists. My audience is not people who want to get on and tell me about why their conspiracy theory is true. What I'm interested in is primarily why people believe weird stuff and the history of that, how it affects our world. And I try and explain that to regular folks who are confused by why people believe so much weird stuff around them.
That is explaining to the normies is actually really hard. It's funny. I'll go to like dinner with my parents and like my sister and my husband-in-law, and they'll like want to talk about this stuff. And I'll be like, could we just talk about maybe, like my sister, I'll be like, can we talk about how your son's doing? He's not here. He's with the babysitter.
Yeah.
Can we talk about other stuff? You know?
So you weren't at the Olive Garden then?
Yeah. Yeah. Mom, didn't you guys just go on a cruise? You got any pictures? You know, the shit that I would be like, do not show me this when I was 25. I'm not like anything but having to tell you about the guy who drinks his own pee.
Yeah. There are so many people on the internet who drink their own pee. Like, it is just a really shocking number.
Can we sit indoors? The chemtrails outside. Or
yeah, exactly.
Do you want chemtrails or non-chemtrails?
Yeah.
Smoking or non-smoking, please.
So it's like I said, it's kind of amazing that I met a person with a conspiracy podcast who's also in a band. Did the Paranoid Strain Orchestra come out of the podcast, or had you two been working on music for a while?
So I'll let Dan sort of take the thing about the band, because the band started before I was in it.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. So we had kind of a band going just for any genre of music. We were the Classless Chaps. We were the Narcs. We were the Grave Throbbers. We were Los Coconuts. Like
Grave Throbbers is it?
the Last
Good name.
Responders.
To explain, those are different names we use when we play different genres
Different
of music.
kinds
so
of gigs.
Classless Chaps is classic country. Los Coconuts is like 60s surf. Last Responders is invariably when we play the Alameda 4th of July parade. That's always our name.
Things like that. Yeah. So, sort of each name was a sort of a fun, send up of the genre. So yeah, a little ironic, a little tongue in cheek, but we always took it seriously. So when started his podcast, it just made sense that
I'll bleep that out.
Garbage. Sorry.
We just doxing people left and right here on Echoplex
All right,
Media.
so I'll start from the top. So when Fearful started his podcast, we of course came to the call. Like the Riders of Rohan, we showed up.
Yeah. So the idea was, when I started my show, I spent about a year planning the kind of show I wanted to do before I actually did it. So there was a lot of figuring out how to use DAW and figuring out what I wanted to say and doing the research that I wanted to do and learning how to be reasonably facile with all of the stuff that I needed to use. But then I also reached out to a friend who's known to the show audience as Willem UFO, who is a longtime artist who does all of the art for my show. I reached out to a friend that all of the listeners know as Dana Unicorn, who agreed to be the sort of Flavor Flav to my Chuck D for all of the shows. She usually injects some sort of sanity into whatever I'm saying. And then I reached out to Dan mostly, and then also the rest of the band, essentially because I wanted to have unique music for each episode. And so a lot of the stuff for the early years that the band did, we would go into a studio, and then at some point, Dan and the guys just started doing things on multiple 4 tracks and producing them as we needed to go. But they're usually kind of ditties about a given topic. Like some of them are more involved. Some of them I've had banked for 5 years and still not gotten to the topics, but a lot of them are just really specific to the thing that I'm about to cover. So I'll tell him 2 months in advance, all right, I'm going to be covering the Salem witch trials, and he will turn out an incredible pastiche of The Cure in their most gothy period that we can use for those songs. And I just use those as the music beds, to take us in and out of segments, etc. And then I always include them at the end of each of my shows is half an hour on a topic, but they all stitch together into one gigantic thing that I release eventually when I finish talking about a topic. And I always include all of the songs at the end of that.
Yeah, so pretty much everything you hear on the podcast is going to be bespoke or strained glass. It's going to be totally unique to what you're listening to. Nothing's been recycled. It's all original research and original art and original creation. So I think it's part of the draw of the show and the dulcet tones of Dana Unicorn.
Of course.
Yeah, that was, again, that was music's a big part of what we do too. We have a music show, but more importantly, for example, on Twitch, when we go live, it's dumb to go live and immediately start talking, right? So people have to get their go live notifications. And other people will just run stuff off Spotify that they really like. Mm-hmm. And people come to my channel and I've never heard this song. And I'm like, that's actually my friend's band.
Yeah.
And at this point, I've got, 17 or 1800 songs. So I can't say always that it's my friend's band, but a good enough amount of time I can. And then people end up, getting into the bands and whatnot. And that was one of the things I was like, this is all original music on this podcast when I first heard it. I'm like, I don't think this guy just found this. Yeah. This is too topical. And it's obvious. Actually, now it's, a couple times in, I'm like, no, that's actually the same band.
That's definitely the same dudes. Yeah.
Yeah. We don't have the luxury of having a million singers. So it's my voice on much of it.
There's a lot of Dan. Yeah.
For better or worse.
He's really, I really think that he's gotten,
though.
I think, so I'm going to toot Dan's horn a little bit now. I've known him for 30 years, and I would say that back in college, he was a reliable font of novelty songs, and I really think that he has become just an amazingly good songwriter in the interim. Yeah. And, if you want to talk about from there, we have had a couple of bigger musical projects that we can get into, or, you know.
Well, Lou Reed and Donald Fagen and Walter Becker started doing novelty songs to get going.
Oh, that's
It kind of freed you up a little bit, actually, because if you're always writing about love or that breakup or True Blue, Moon, June, you're going to run out of ideas pretty quickly and become really too derivative. But if you're writing a song, about Nibiru or Paul McCartney is dead, or like just things that will, or like Russiagate, all these things will spur new ideas for what kind of genres you can play with, and so you're not really hemmed in by one kind of thing. So, yeah, it's very liberating.
Well, that's cool. I'd like to maybe get to some of the music from the rock opera.
Yeah.
What I have queued up here first is Jefferson, if that's fine with the two of you.
Oh, sure,
Yeah,
absolutely.
sure.
And then we can talk about what the project is or whatever afterwards.
Yeah, I'd like to. Definitely want to, and I want to. Like I said, I probably heard this, but it was a long rock opera.
We'll discuss the length.
Well, opera's long anyway,
Yeah, I've actually never heard a 30-minute rock opera.
I mean,
No.
yeah,
that would be a really short
this season the SFO's doing Wagner's Lohengrin. That's like 4 hours. No one's
Yeah.
seeing that.
Yeah, exactly.
No, but they are seeing Upon Red Horse.
Yeah.
All right, well, we'll be right back with the Paranoid Strain Orchestra.
Pushed up over the edge. He thinks that he has no friends he can rely on. Prepares for the worst. He puts his family first, 'cause they are the reasons he thirsts for freedom. It'll be okay. Go find a cave and live out our lives. I just wanna go back to Jefferson. That's where I wanna go. That's my home. Well, I can't wait to go back to Jefferson. That's where I wanna go. That's my home. When the smoke clears to reveal the truth of your fears, and everything and everyone you knew has been wiped out. Your family is sick from the radiation in the wind, mutating, melting, weird. They lash out. And you find your gun won't fire in time. As they pull you apart, start eating your brains. You think, I just wanna go back to Jefferson. That's where I wanna go. That's my home. Well, I can't wait to go back to Jefferson. That's where I wanna go. That's my home.
That was Jefferson by the Paranoid Strain Orchestra. And off air, I heard that it's about a certain imaginary state.
Yeah. So I think famously going back to about the 40s, I want to say, there were some sort of redneck separatists, which is definitely not a new concept to the American dream. When whenever, I mean, the Mormons may have been the first, who knows, but they started their own state in parts of Northern California and southeastern Oregon. Some might even say southwestern Idaho. And they call it Jefferson. It didn't quite fit into the rock opera that we had planned, but I had this inspiration to sort of sing about it because during the pandemic, I wanted to go somewhere where there weren't a lot of people. So I took a road trip through Jefferson, through Northern California, through Shasta. I passed the sign for the Malheur Bird Sanctuary, which made me laugh when I thought of all the dildos that were mailed there
And
during the
giant tub of
standoff.
lube, too.
Yeah.
And
55 gallons.
and also parts of southwestern Idaho. And I overheard a lot of conversations about how the pandemic was bullshit and da-da-da. And of course, every single road had a Trump Pence sign in the front lawn. And I thought to myself, what have they done for you? But at any rate, I just had this good hook for a chorus. And then the song sort of became somewhat They Might Be Giants-esque in the second verse, where a guy who's trying to protect his family ends up being turned upon by his family who have radiation poisoning and become zombies. Then it has kind of like a 70s theme song
if it's
ending.
going to happen anywhere, it's going to happen up in that, honestly.
Yeah, I know. It just made sense. And also, whenever I would go to supermarkets around that time, there'd be like no magazines about like music or about art or diversity or love. And there'd be tons of magazines about preppers. And I think all these grocery store managers just really overloaded their orders for magazines with like guns and ammo and prepping. And there was one magazine I'll never forget, was just this guy by himself, and he's ripped, and he has tattoos, and he has a big backpack on and a camouflage hat, and he's turning his head over his shoulder at the nuclear baked city he's leaving behind. He just hiked away from. Somehow he hiked away from the blast. He's hiking away from the radiation.
It's like
And
a John Bircher wet dream.
Yeah, so this one, and like there's a little like mushroom cloud in his eye, and like that's the twinkle in his eye. And I thought that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. So I have to write a song ridiculing this.
And the great thing about the song is absolutely does not have an apocalyptic sound to it. It sounds like something you'd listen. Sounds like something you'd hear in a movie while the two protagonists, or maybe they'd be women or whatever, like hopping in the
We'll
convertible.
meet again at the end of Strangelove.
Dan's
moment.
most bizarre songs are the ones that have the most conventional hooks. Like that's a pretty consistent scenario. I do feel like people who are listening to this have no idea what you mean when you say rock opera. So I would like to just briefly explain the concept, like what we did within the show. Cause I think,
You know what else I didn't even do? I didn't even ask you to plug your upcoming event.
Oh, yeah.
Like, we're all fucked up. This is all fucked
all
up
right,
so far.
So just briefly, we are live, Dan and me and our four collaborators plus some additional singers are going to be performing songs from our rock opera, which I'll get to in just a second, which is called Upon a Red Horse. And we're going to be playing them live at the Fireside in Alameda starting at 9 p.m. So Alameda, California. We'd love to see you there.
And what's the date on that?
We think it's this Friday, the 21st. So of 2023, in case you're listening to this in the future. So you missed it. Sorry.
Yeah, you can't go.
Oh, it was a great show. You guys should have been there.
This is
It's
in the future.
legendary. They've written a lot of books about it. You've probably
Ted
heard
Williams'
about it
head
now.
was there. It was great.
They actually turned the venue into a museum that commemorates your show.
So the occasion for this, because mostly this band tends to play cover sets when we play live, because we just like getting together and playing, and then we play stuff in the studio for the show. But back in 2020, late 2021, Dan specifically in the band generally came to me with this idea. Dan had a sort of idea for a song cycle that had to do with a person who would be who would come under the influence of conspiracy theories and start out as just sort of a guy who had been out of the military, and then he ends up at the events of January 6th, and then decides that he actually doesn't want to be part of this and rebels against it and decides to actually go home and try to create positive change where he lives. So he had this whole series of songs, and so I just kind of wrote a rough script around it so that it kind of hung together. And that was our first rock opera, which is called 9116. Both of these are available in the podcast feed. So the Paranoid Strain, just like any other podcast, if you go back through our feed, you'll find 2 episodes from January of 2022 that we put out called 9116. And we're really proud of those. We think they're great.
And that's a Rush shout out.
But
so you know.
Yeah, I figured they knew that. Plus, it's 9/11.
My audience tends to be what's the word I'm looking for? Middle aged. So yeah, probably.
So they definitely.
We're currently in a man cave, so it feels right. You know.
So because that was such a good experience, and because I've never met a scenario that I couldn't make more complicated, I suggested to the band soon after that first project that we take on another project, and I happen to have read this book that's called Pale Horse Rider. It's by Mark Jacobson, and it's an excellent biography of a real guy whose name is
Mark, if you're listening,
whose name is going to escape me now because I just think of him as Fletcher now. His name is Milton William Cooper. He was a real conspiracy theorist who started out. He was a Vietnam vet, really, and he got big in UFO circles, and then he wrote one of the most influential conspiracy theorist books of all time, which is called Behold a Pale Horse. It is a huge, like, people pass it around in prisons. It presumes to tell you about the secret way that everything is run. And then
it's
he eventually
a very racist book.
No, so it's not. So it is a super anti-Semitic book because it has the Protocols of the Elders of Zion in it. But one of the things that I think is most interesting about this guy is that uniquely among other conspiracists, he was much less racist. I can't say zero racist, but I can say tremendously less racist,
and just
less
for people
homophobic.
just for people out there, you're talking about Bill Cooper.
I'm talking about Bill Cooper right now.
Because you used his full name, and
right,
most
exactly.
people.
Yeah, Milton William Cooper, Bill Cooper. He was much less racist and less focused on these sort of like social, conservative social ideas like anti-gay stuff and all these things. He actually doesn't seem to have been particularly anti-gay. He got in trouble, understandably, because he included the entire Protocols of Zion in his book. He just reprinted the whole thing.
You could include that in a cookbook, and then that would turn it into a racist ass cookbook.
Of course it would. But this is one of the things I've discovered from doing the show. The Protocols are such a perfect conspiracy document that, and this is not an excuse for them continuing to reprint it, because it's obviously evil and a lie.
It's the Mr. Potato Head of conspiracy documents.
But they can't resist it because it's a perfect story. So a lot of people who are not anti-Semitic in their conspiracy theories will just say, well, this is not really about the Jews. This is actually about the Illuminati or like some other group, but they can't, like, it's such a perfect encapsulation of the viewpoint. They can't get away from it. So that seems to have been the way that Bill Cooper looked at this. But anyway, the point is that he wrote this incredibly influential book. He had this very influential shortwave show, and his life kind of fell apart. And then at the end, he basically predicted 9/11, like in a mostly coincidental way, but he did essentially predicted in June of 2001. And then he also predicted he would get shot by the cops, but that happened because of a sort of trigger happy sheriff and the fact that he started shooting at cops and actually paralyzed one of them. So that wasn't all that surprising.
Like, so it's self-fulfilling prophecy.
Right, exactly. So my idea was to fictionalize this guy's life. So we took many liberties with this. We changed the name of the guy. We changed all kinds of things about it. It's actually a completely fictional life. Assembled a full voice cast to act it out as a sort of like failed documentary that is just available in audio form because the guy who tried to make the documentary failed, but he had all the audio. And then we retold Bill Cooper's life as this guy named Marvell James Fletcher, who is very similar but different than Bill Cooper. And there are 51 original songs, and some of them are background music. But this is in 5 acts. They're very digestible in like 45 to 50 minute, maybe an hour length.
I was smart that you put it out that way too. I think serialized in a podcast form.
Yeah,
I think that it especially like because the concepts that are in there, they're concepts that your Paranoid Strain audience is already familiar with.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you want to send people to listen to it, if you're like, here's my rock opera, it's 19 hours long or whatever the fuck.
Yeah.
It's 4.5. Yeah.
But it's better to be like, here's my rock opera. Here's episode 1 of it. It's 45 minutes, and then people might get hooked on it. And now the next one comes out.
Right.
Then that's a way smarter way to do it than to put it out all at once.
Well, thanks. Well, I also feel like the acts really stand on their own as separate parts of the story, because there's There's the second act is really just about his UFO stuff, which is a relatively narrow part of his life, but very important. The third one's really just about the book. The fourth one is really about the radio show. So there, it divides his life up into these interesting categories, and the songs that the band wrote, I wrote a couple, but basically this is almost all the songs you'll hear are Dan or the other guys in the band. I think Dan wrote 40 or co-wrote 40 of the songs that are in here, and I just think they're great, and I'm looking forward to playing them live.
I wish circumstances were different and I could be there. Especially, I wish I had moved up. If I had moved up to the East Bay last month,
Yeah.
I'd just already be at the venue waiting for the show.
Yeah.
Well, let me tell you, reading Pale Horse Rider by Mark Jacobson is such a great read, but I was going through it. I couldn't believe how much ground this guy's life had covered. Verifiable, it had covered. It wasn't just made up. And there's so many things on each page that just suggested songs and things that would be good songs. For example, there was one mention of King Jesus, and I thought, oh, we need a good gospel rave up.
So
I've never written that before, so I took
gospel what?
We have a gospel
rave
up song called King
Rave-
Jesus.
rave up, like disco or-
just
like-
just sort of like raise the roof,
high
praise
energy
Jesus.
gospel number,
country style
I thought
gospel.
you meant like
rock.
screaming synthesizers and huge drums.
No,
Yeah.
that would be
That would've
awesome.
been
But
funny
no,
too.
think more of the Foggy Bottom Boys.
Okay, yeah.
So I spent, so I poured 15 years of wasted Roman Catholicism and CCD into that song. So I think the greatest compliment would be
You
if
just
someone
made
covered
Homeboy
it in
spit
the
out his
church.
ice. What?
Yeah.
This guy laughed so hard he spit out his ice.
That was a nice spitter right there.
I think I explained this the last time I'm on your show. There is no scenario where I'm not chewing ice if there's ice available. I apologize.
yeah.
I'm really glad I have knockoff SM58 mics then and not Blue Yetis because you just hear clunk, clunk,
Yep.
clunk,
Nope.
clunk.
That's
if
why
we
I
had
switched
Neumann's
off of a
here,
Blue
it'd be a
Yeti.
totally
Yeah,
different
yeah.
story. But so the book was just so foundational for inspiring everything about it. So, Fearful had the proof of concept just in the idea, and so reading the book really made it happen because it inspired all of us.
Yeah. So everything about this thing is, and the weird thing is, it's actually heavily edited. But in terms of the original scope of the thing, but there's 51 songs, and the script, the words in the script are 18,000 words and it's all in the form of interviews with people from this fictional version of Bill Cooper's life. All of it's based on the real guy and quotes from I rewrote large sections of his book into short little monologues, and I tried to keep the production of the spoken stuff interesting also. So for example, when we quote from the book, first of all, I rewrote it into a much shorter version, but then also the conceit for that is that for the documentary, they were using an old cassette version, a pirate audiobook that was made by somebody who had backmasked his voice back in the 90s. So you have the sound of the tape player starting up, and then there's a heavily backmasked version of my voice, so that it's very deep and weird.
Yeah.
And it will it'll tell this chunk of his theory, and then it'll drop into a song. And I feel like I do not feel like any podcast has ever done anything like this.
I was when I think I started listening right before you started dropping those episodes. It was because I think you had started the Q How We Got Here before.
I've been doing Q. That's 6 episodes at this point. I've been doing it for about a year. Yeah.
I caught on pretty late. I did go back to the beginning like I was told though, because I'm not very obedient. But if something's about QAnon and it's this is because the How We Got Here. The first time we had you on our show, we had you on the Cults and Satanic Panic show because I thought that was super, super relevant. And I wanted to get you, and you were kind of with me. I wanted to get you on soon.
Yeah.
Because
first, I had just done that section. So yeah.
And so it was super relevant because we were going over old Satanic Panic material, and so it was, it was kind of perfect. And then the rock opera started, and I was like, oh, what the fuck is this? And I listened to the first one. I'm like, whoa, this is really well done.
Yeah, we didn't want to waste your time, and
thanks.
And we don't do things by half measures.
No.
And one last thought about the Mark Jacobson book is that one of the best parts about the book is that the writer himself is not judgmental on Bill Cooper and his life and what he did. He's just giving you the facts. He's not trying to puncture every single thing that Cooper said. Like that's not his aim.
Well, I mean, you can do that yourself. If
Exactly. And because like some of the things he said are just prima facie ridiculous, but the rock opera that we did was kind of respectful to what Jacobson accomplished in his own work, because we didn't want to be just some like liberals snarkily laughing at some guy in his life and all the sheeple that believed him.
It's been a very long time too. I think to go back into history and do that is like it's like hack. It's like real
seriously.
hack material.
Yeah.
Well, he also like I sort of alluded to earlier. He's a complicated figure. He's negative in many, many ways. But I guarantee you, if he had become the Alex Jones, like in terms of that popularity, it would be better. It wouldn't be great, but it would be way better, and it would be a lot less like just sort of xenophobic, and like he was not afraid of immigrants. Like he was eloquent in defending Rodney King during the riots and pointing out like this is a man who was horrifically beaten. He was an anti-cop guy. He was not an anti-Rodney King guy. So like, again, super problematic. Beat his wives. They also beat him. Like he was a terrible person in a lot of ways. Abandoned his kids. Like I said, the anti-Semitic protocol stuff. You can't. But he was no Art Bell. He's fascinating. No, I have a real love for Art Bell, who I feel
too.
like
one of the best broadcasters of the 20th century.
Stunningly good broadcaster. I plan to do a huge chunk on Art Bell in my next big series, which is going to be broadly about UFOs.
If I think I said this to you, if you ever do chemtrails, you got to have me on.
So I did chemtrails as episode 6. The problem is that you've talked to me about this since then. Like chemtrails was much less aggressive when I covered it. And so you've been talking about how the chemtrails people have gotten like all crazy since, and much more in your face.
I think that what happened was QAnon dropped, right? As like a big cultural phenomenon. And I think that it didn't really become a big cultural phenomenon until the pandemic. It was bigger maybe than Pizzagate in some ways, but when the pandemic hit, and it wasn't just like straight up like, oh, everything is like the Q bakers or whatever, right? That's not how it worked. It was like all the concepts started weaving into people's paranoia about the virus, and the chemtrails people, they either got on that ship because it was setting sail, or they ended up stuck on the chemtrail island. And so that's sort of, and that's and then they faded into obscurity, and they had to up the ante on their rhetoric. But that's
all his poor marooned conspiracy theories.
Man, I really, what kind of conspiracy theorists I like? I like the Bigfoot people, and I like the UFO people. If that's all they believe in.
They're both real nice people.
They probably have weed, and they're cool.
That's like the Beatles Rolling Stones argument.
Yeah, exactly. I've never done Bigfoot because I don't feel like it's a conspiracy. Like as a rule, like I think of it as just like people believe this thing's out there. I don't, and they are trying to find it, but they're not. I mean, I'm sure some of them are, but broadly in the culture, people don't think that Bigfoot people are saying like, and the government and the Jews and the Illuminati are keeping us from learning about Bigfoot. So I feel like it's not really in my image.
Biden just declassified a bunch of JFK material. Bigfoot could have been in there.
Could have been.
Maybe
in
he's
there.
redacted.
Who knows?
Yeah, he actually
did it.
Yeah.
He just stomped on his brain,
Yeah.
So I want to pull up another one of these songs here. I have Glenn pulled up, but if there's another one you guys...
Great. So just briefly, I'll let him explain like the idea of the song. But this is from Act 2. And the centerpiece of Act 2 is our guy, Marvell James Fletcher, giving his big speech, which Cooper really did do for... You can watch it on YouTube. To the MUFON audience, that's Mutual UFO Network, sort of the biggest UFO group. He became their rising star the second he gave this this very highly conspiratorial speech that was supposedly based on classified stuff he saw while he was in naval intelligence. He was actually in naval intelligence. That is really true. I do not believe he saw all the stuff he claimed he did, but he was giving this speech, and one of the things they talked about was that there was this plant-based alien who was captured and kept in captivity and studied for several years. And then Dan, I think, I don't know why he ended up named Glenn. I think that, but anyway, he named the song Glenn. And so
how'd the guy end up named Glenn?
That's actually
Glenn the houseplant. Like,
actually there's a reason for that. Which is initially it was going to be aliens talking to John Glenn, who was orbiting the Earth. And so they had this little rapport together. And then Fearful said, no, it can't be John Glenn. So I just stubbornly
You're like,
made
well,
him
whatever.
Glenn, which I don't know. I always thought Glenn has kind of like a nice little
Well, they
sort of man in a bathrobe feel to it. I
that's
don't know.
true.
Sure.
In the
Think of like William Riker.
in the Bill Cooper, his original writing and speeches on this, he claimed that the alien was called EBE, so we renamed him in the lyrics EB Glenn.
Yeah,
so his extra biological entity. So
Oh yeah. There's a lot of X-Files stuff
Yeah.
was
Well-
based on Bill Cooper's UFO stuff.
I was gonna get to that. So obviously, a large part of Bill Cooper's story, and just of course, I think our childhoods or young adulthoods in general was a complete love for the X-Files, one of the greatest shows ever put on.
You know, have you ever heard the podcast Fox Mulder is a Maniac, where it looks at it through the lens of like whether or not Fox Mulder should be in the FBI or possibly in prison?
Oh, definitely in prison.
almost certainly in prison. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean-
He commits way more crimes than the Smoking Man.
Oh, yeah.
I
Maybe
mean,
not as extreme, but
Yeah.
certainly way
he's
more.
definitely into BDSM. Like we know this from the shows.
Would just
mythology.
casually be watching porn while his
You've
while his
never
partner
seen
was
Fox's bedroom for a reason,
Right.
Because just like the way Dennis is a serial killer in Always Sunny, so there's nice little. I think Fox predates Dennis, but yeah. So there's a lot of X-Files happening in Glenn, for sure, but there's also a lot of Spielberg. So I particularly E.T. of course. Once the fearsome armed men from the government arrive and start wearing the hazmat suits and walking through all the tunnels, and they're having this conversation with the extraterrestrial. So it's just kind of
Trying
fun
to
to
get
have
him to
them.
be their friend.
Yeah, and so all the verses are a dialogue with the alien. So I thought that was kind of fun. And there's another song in the rock opera called "Tech for Flesh," where it's literally the meeting between the alien Supreme Emperor and Eisenhower and their secret meeting. I think around like Palm Springs at some point. Like
the one
there's
where they're
some
shaking
story.
hands in that
Yeah,
picture.
like there's some story where Ike had to get a filling replaced or something like that, but he was secretly meeting with the aliens and striking this bargain, tech for flesh, obviously, which we all know happened. And so
Definitely.
so like there are
Definitely
two alien dialogue songs, and then there's one that our bass player Turd Ferguson wrote called Mothership.
Yeah.
Also gets that Close Encounters Spielberg vibe going on. So yeah, and Foo Fighter, which our lead guitar player Moisty wrote, which is a fun sort of like Chicago meets Prague meets a UFO song kind of song. Anyway, so,
Right on. This is Glenn by Paranoid Strain Orchestra, and we'll be back to probably, I don't know, maybe talk more about the X-Files.
We want to know you. We'd love to know you. E.B. Glenn. We want to show you. Oh, show us the mysteries within.
Very nice. I now want to be friends with Glenn too.
He's a good dude.
He's a nice guy.
Again, everybody, I'm here with the Paranoid Strain Orchestra. We're checking out some of the music from their rock opera. I've been pretty impressed with the music. I like that it's certainly all very happy, which is kind of
Some
funny.
of it is, yeah.
Well, yeah, a lot of it is. I think we have one that's in your playlist that's written by Turd Ferguson, our bass player. Everyone, I should explain, involved with the show has a pseudonym, because I find that people who are fans of conspiracy theories tend to be a little touchy, and I have a wife and kids, and I don't want them to know who I am. So therefore, I am referred to exclusively as Fearful Jesuit, except for when Dan said my real name earlier in this, which kindly is going to get bleeped out. But I
His
do want
real
to
name
mention
is
it because he
Girth
definitely did it.
Benelux.
Yes, exactly. So anyway, so yeah, it's also kind of fun just to be anonymous. So I've got a fan group on Facebook and everything, and nobody knows what my actual name is because I'm Fearful Jesuit for everybody. But yeah, so there was a song written by Turd Ferguson. He chose that name. That is a very aggressive. I would say it's like a sort of slice of Pixies, sort of 90s. I don't know. It's kind of a wall of sound that I really enjoy, that we ended up using as the introduction for Marvell James Fletcher's radio show to sort of distinguish it from the country gospel stuff that was typically on the shortwave at the time. And so that one's one of the ones that we have available.
This is
so
the
we can
best
listen to
song
later.
that Husker Du never recorded.
Yeah.
It could have been on Warehouse, but it wasn't.
Definitely.
You know, but instead it was recorded by the Breeders.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, yeah.
Well, what's the name of that one?
That one's called, you've got the
It's
name
called
Ooze.
5 Minutes to Midnight.
We renamed it 5 Minutes to Midnight, but its working title was Ooze, so that's what you have it as. If you want to.
5 Minutes to Midnight is the fictional name of the show that Milton Fletcher is doing in the rock opera. So it's a little intertextual.
Well, let's let that run. We'll check that run.
That's a nice short one.
It's a good screamer.
Yeah.
Good screamer. Very nice.
Not so much no depression, but depression.
Clock is stopped at the end of time. It's your one last chance to wake and rise. Now is always the time. 5 minutes to midnight. You must not leave. You hear everything. Distract each page. Don't think of the slave. She will bleed. It leads to blue. The predictions have all come true. Will you heed the call tonight? It's the hour of your life. We're on night, we're right, and back. Don't listen to me no more. I'm frequency. Tune in, tune in.
That was 5 Minutes to Midnight by Paranoid Strain Orchestra. That was great. That was a little different than the other stuff. You were right. It was a little
It's
quicker.
If you listen, so you know, different acts, like I said, sound really different. There's a lot of songs in the first act that are essentially background to interviews about his life. So he was in Vietnam. So Dan cranked out a Creedence song that is so close to being a Creedence song you would think it was a Creedence song, except technically it's not.
Yeah.
But man, is it a Creedence
I
song?
don't know how Fogerty did it.
Yeah, and then we've got, one that's like a combination conspiracy theory song and throwback to like Beach Blanket Bingo. We've got a lot of sort of like 60s period stuff, but then we've got a lot of sort of completely different things. There's that image that you have that's in the screen right now. That's sort of a funny story. One of his claims to fame during the UFO period was he had a completely novel theory about how JFK got killed. This is the real Bill Cooper. And
was it the glasses man and not the smoking man?
No, his theory was, look at that image, that the driver of the limo turned around and shot JFK and no one noticed. That was his actual theory, and he sold grainy copies of the Zapruder film that supposedly proved this. Now, if you actually look at what he's talking about, it's clearly the glint that he's talking about seeing is just the pomade of the other driver, like the other guy in the front seat. This was so inspirational that our lead guitarist wrote what I can only describe as like a Ween meets Zappa song.
And Devo.
Called Shellfish Toxin Pellet Gun, which he claimed that the CIA gave this guy a shellfish toxin pellet gun that not only injected into the president's brain, but if it hadn't blown it up, would have poisoned him anyway, so he would definitely have died.
Yeah.
I should probably mention at this point that there's another element of this rock opera, which is there's a couple of friends of mine who do sort of absurdist comedy sketches if you familiar with Firesign Theater from the 70s, like really weird, surreal sort of stuff.
Michael McKean, Harry Shearer.
And they're called the Chads, and their periodically updated podcast is called Stupid Land. They have been a part of my show for years, but I actually had them do specific skits in this show rather than just appear as themselves, their characters as the Chads. So one of the things I did was, after I had Fletcher describe this ridiculous scenario for JFK, I had them act out being the CIA handler who would tell the driver that this was the plan, that he was going to shoot the president from the front seat as if it was real, because this is one of my favorite things to do with conspiracy theorists, just take them at their word and then dramatize them and see what it sounds like, because they all sound stupid if you actually try to make them into a dialogue that human beings would have, right? So, and then it also led to, if anybody checks it out, Act 2 has this remarkable image from Willem UFO of a smiling limo driver turning around and firing this very odd looking.
But the joke's kind of like, Chad too is the assassin, and he's been training with this rifle to shoot the president from a faraway distance, maybe even a grassy knoll.
Yeah, exactly.
And the guy's like, no, you're going to shoot him with the shellfish toxic pellet gun while you're driving the car.
It's a much better plan. No one's going to notice.
After all this training, I'm now going to do this, and no one's going to see me do it. Yeah.
They also put various shellfish sounding like lobster sound effects for whenever the gun is being used, which also make me laugh.
So like one of the inspirations for this rock opera was there's a great 3-album concept album by Stephen Merritt of the Magnetic Fields called 69 Love Songs, and
back in like 2000.
Yeah, about 20 years ago. And the conceit was that every song's about love and every song's in a different style, and there are 69 of them. And so that was kind of the challenge for us, is to keep things novel. We'll do almost styles, every song in a different genre of music. So it's fun for us, it's fresh for the listener. So that's part of the fun.
And a bit of a challenge. And
yeah, exactly.
Sure. But it's also liberating. We basically do
this because it's fun for us, creating things is fun.
Yes, it is. Yes,
yeah, like instead of playing like a rock guitar like that last song, I'll strum a ukulele and yodel. Who knows what comes out?
Yeah,
probably crap.
I mean, yodeling is hard. Actually, I don't.
It is.
I don't.
We can't yodel.
Yeah.
He's putting
my yodeling days are behind me.
he's writing checks his ass can't cash. He cannot.
If anyone's listening to this, you donate $1,000 to my project, and I will yodel right in the middle of our most popular podcast next Wednesday.
That's a solid deal.
Brought to you by Swiss Miss.
Yeah. I'll try to yodel your fucking name. Like, I'm not even going to do it. No, it costs $1,000. I got this. Are we done? Before we play this last song here, what's up with Are We Done?
Okay, Are We Done? I am taking credit for Are We Done mostly because Dan has a habit of writing songs based on the fact that I am the exasperated person who's trying to keep us on track at practices, and I believe I was suggesting that we should shut everything down because we practice at my house. And even though I have a very heavily soundproofed garage, I still want us to stop practice before my neighbors start a petition to get me moved out of the neighborhood. So I believe that I said, "Are we done?" at some point, which caused Dan to start singing a riff.
The drummer said it.
Oh, it was our drummer. Yeah. But anyway, this does happen often when I tell people to stop playing.
How's that soundproofed garage treat you during the August?
God, it's so hot. It's so there is no ventilation because you can't have ventilation because the sound would get out.
Right.
So it is completely unventilated, and there are 6 burly men in this
and music equipment.
Never has the term "shit hot rockin' been so literally
defined.
We turn
off the lights and everything to try and save some, but it is an easy 40-degree drop when we walk outside into the Bay, the close Bay Area weather. But anyway, so Are We Done went from I don't even know why we were recording this song to one of my favorites as Dan worked on it and turned it into something. I think that's great.
One thing that I like to do that's not always appreciated by everyone else in the band is do sort of like a Dadaist automatic writing. If something just keys off a song, I'll just start singing it and playing chords under it immediately. And sometimes it works. A lot of times it doesn't.
It's really the timing.
This time it actually worked. And speaking of hot solos, this one has probably the hottest solo of the whole rock opera.
A good solo, and then all of us doing a drunken bar sing-along for the chorus. Also.
Our lead player's name is Moisty.
Yeah.
And this and this solo is steamy.
All right, well, this is Are We Done by the Paranoid Strain Orchestra, and we'll be right back.
Are we done? 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 We've been hearing this shit for years. We've heard so much is coming out of our ears. Are we done? 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 We've been hearing this shit for years. We all wish that we could stop our ears. Are we done?
All right, that was great. I did like the sing along. I was expecting that I was expecting that song song Tub Thumper, like I get knocked down. But that's what didn't happen
man.
actually.
Well, no, he
Chumbawamba's greatest hits.
I will
is
say
my favorite
this
album.
about Dan. Regularly
one
when he's
song.
introducing new songs to the band, I think, what in the fuck is happening here? I don't get any of this, and why are there so many sections of it? And then by the time we finish it, nearly all the time I'm like, yeah, I get it. Okay.
And it's only
that
3
makes
minutes
sense.
long, actually.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, they're never that long, but when you're learning them and he's just presenting them to you as like, and then there's this part, and then there's this part, you're like, why is there not just one part?
It's like Bob Pollard disease. I'm sure that there's like, come on, man, just stop. Like
Exactly.
I just learned yesterday's 20 songs.
Yeah,
Why are there
exactly.
more? Yeah, it's kind of a glut sometimes. You can't help it.
This is this is definitely one of my favorite interviews I've ever done. This is pretty cool. I also like that when you guys talk, the glasses man pulsates a little bit. It's totally cute. It's totally
Yeah,
cute. I'm
no,
glad I
that's-
picked it
Oh,
up.
you see him too?
Dan just sees him in his vision all the time now. It's ever since Nam.
Oh yeah, all the time.
Yeah.
So, what's next for this, like the Paranoid Strain Orchestra
Okay.
musically?
It's a really good question.
So the first thing is we're going back to being a cover band because that's a lot of fun for us to get together with our friends and just
You
play
get paid,
shows
so
out.
You get paid for that.
Honestly, it's more that we just like hanging out with friends and learning songs.
buys me
But
time to write more.
we don't make that much money off of this as a side gig. But I am actually going to, over the next few months, put together a presentation, because that's kind of what I did for this one, to the band, and I'm going to convince them all, at gunpoint if necessary, that we're going to do a different rock opera probably in a year plus from now that we'll start thinking about, that's going to be very loosely oriented around something having to do with the concept of UFOs or aliens. The next segment of my show, so that, as you alluded, the current series, which is wrapping up, I think I should have 3 or 4 more episodes left, is called QAnon How We Got Here. The next one, since it's about aliens and UFOs, etc., I think I'm calling Unidentified. And I'm just going to try and talk about like how humans have thought about alien presences, and it's going to go really far afield. I plan to talk about like Art Bell for a long time. I plan to talk about like cosmic horror. I plan to talk about David Icke, that motherfucker.
Fuck David Icke.
For a long time. I plan to talk a lot about David Icke because he is quietly one of the worst people in the world, and really like just backs every worst possible thing, and he's just a fucking asshole. And he's got a lot of books that I can make fun of. So this is going to be a long one. This series is probably going to be a year and a half, 2 years when I think about the podcast. So sometime in that period, we'll come up with a new thing, and I don't even know what the structure of it's going to be, but I guarantee you it'll be very different than this one, and hopefully it'll be a challenge for all of us, and we'll have a brace of new songs, and it'll be super fun.
Yeah, it'll be the rock through opera. We'll see.
See, well, you got some time to think about it now.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh
What
yeah.
do they call this? The pre-contemplation phase.
Exactly. This
Yeah.
is the ideation. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
that's great. I mean, I'm looking forward to the alien stuff because, like, not like I was saying before, like the alien stuff can generally be a little more fun until you get into like David Icke stuff,
Exactly.
where the
Yeah.
aliens are like basically just Jews.
No, mostly no one's dying over this shit,
Yeah.
except when they start targeting real life people and claiming they're lizard people, which is basically code for Jews.
Right, but most of the time it's not that, and it's like a lot more fun.
Yeah,
and
I agree.
like we do a conspiracy bingo on this show on Fridays,
Yeah.
and every other month or so we'll kind of switch it up. We'll be like, well, we're going to do Flat Earth Friday this time, or we'll do UFOs and UAPs and aliens, because like otherwise it's just you're just terrorizing people every Friday night, and so you gotta mix it up. I'm working on Cryptid Night, but it's really hard because the cryptid stuff, there's not a lot of independent creators, and if there are, it's just like a round table of 4 dudes like talking
Right.
about Bigfoot, and that's not. And it's like I want like semi-produced kind of crappy documentary style stuff.
Yeah.
That's the most fun, and there's not a lot of that about Bigfoot. It's
Yeah.
either 4 dudes talking on a Zoom call or like from the History Channel who will sue me.
Yeah.
So
There's a comedy podcast,
But
that
they're
I
all talking about their
overheard.
dick, which is
you and I
weird.
can talk about it off air, but they covered some sort of show that's like hillbilly Bigfoot investigators. That is like a real series or something, and it
Is this like
sounds
the
like
ghost hunters?
It's way lower budget than that.
It's like a
and,
Blair Witch like headlamp
way
in the
dumber.
forest.
where they just kind of set up these obvious scenarios and then stumble upon them is the way these guys were describing it.
Yeah.
So maybe that would be useful for you. I'll try and remember what that is.
if
Including
you can
that.
just zap it to me or whatever, because I
Yeah.
do want to do cryptids, but It's one of the harder ones to do because
Sure.
you still, you know, you don't want to really lean too much on making fun of the cryptid people so much. You know, it's like a, you know, like just like when we do the UFO one, we don't lean too hard on making fun of the UFO people.
Nobody's
Yeah.
ruining people's lives with.
I mean,
this,
except like, you know,
maybe their own.
we'll go after like that Linda Moulton Howe lady, but mostly because she's a grifter, not because necessarily because of the
Sure,
subject
sure.
matter.
She was also a very frequent Art Bell guest
She
back
was.
in the day. Yeah.
She was.
Yeah.
She was. And just a big shout out to Art Bell. The people who replaced him are not very good replacements for Art
George
Bell.
Norrie is just a disappointment on every level.
Just big culture war shit, like leaning way
Oh,
more.
I didn't even know that. I stopped listening to him immediately because he just couldn't fill the shoes. Like there was no point.
Well, I mean, neither of us could either, but like
No.
you could still be like not as good a broadcaster and try to still keep the spirit of the show
Sure.
in the same way.
Can't
yeah, the
unring that
genius of
bell.
Art Bell, I've always said, was that he is the world's most credulous human being. If you were talking to him, he was gonna go along with your bullshit.
He was a good
and
listener.
ride it wherever it went. And he didn't like he would have two completely conflicting views on the day after that, and you would think that he agreed with both of them just because he was interested in talking to people about weird shit.
Also, like once again, like we're not trying to just poke fun and laugh at all these people that believe these things. Although we do laugh, and we
You
do,
have to,
and we
because,
do joke.
like you, like
because
we
how
say,
can you
like
not,
on my
you
show, we
know?
say we're like laughing as the world burns. Like,
Yeah, can't help it. You know, it's gonna be that cartoon dog in the cafe on fire. But meme. But really, what it's about is we don't think that people that believe these things are stupid, because in order to believe these things, you have to really have a lot of knowledge about these twisted Byzantine inner workings of how it all works. So clearly,
Even
this
if it's
person,
not true.
yeah. But like, so we're always fascinated in why people believe these things, why they continue to believe these things, even to their own detriment or their family's detriment, and that's fascinating.
Like when we talk about cults and well, I don't like the word cult so much anymore. I like to talk
Yeah.
about control demand groups.
Yeah,
When we talk about that, like one of the things I talk about is it's not that it's this person generally that gets them into it. It's these sets of circumstances
Yeah.
makes them vulnerable to manipulation.
I'm currently
And-
watching The Vow about Nexium,
Yeah, yeah.
and of course that goes to an extreme end. You're like, how did it get this far? Well, they show you.
Yeah.
And then it's a lot of times, you know, or we talk a lot about Scientology, where a lot of times the top of that funnel is a family with some money whose one of their kids or whatever got involved
The
in
Seeger
drug
fortune,
addiction.
the Nexium,
Yeah.
for example.
Yeah, yeah, and
Yeah.
it's you know, and then you think they healed you from your drug addition, and now
Right.
Now
you're-
you owe
you're-
them something.
Now they hung the moon. Yeah.
and now
Yeah.
you're a
You can do it all
Scientologist.
Yeah,
and
imagine
it's-
if your AA sponsor was also your cult leader. You know.
right.
yeah.
That's what they do to people. And that's really the only way they have to recruit left. But one of the things that you know I've been thinking about a lot is how that dynamic can and does play out in conspiracy communities. It's just not as kind of cut and dry and top down. There's no kind of
Yeah.
ivory tower. There's like many leaders and many, in this case, many David Miscaviges or many L. Ron Hubbards out
Yeah.
there that are.
Many Koreshes.
Ooh, David Koresh. It was
We
disappointing.
have two
that they-
songs about him in the rock opera.
Disappointing they made him so hot in that fucking thing about him.
He's well.
What are you
yeah,
gonna
yeah,
do?
yeah.
I
Taylor
mean, he was
Kitsch.
really hot towards the end.
Yeah, I'm a straight man, but man, that is a hot dude.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. I'm like, I feel some kind of way about him.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but he's, you know, I mean, you know, you want to.
He's riding around that
obviously
Camaro.
obviously they cast beautiful people whenever they can.
Sure. Except for Janet Reno. She stayed ugly.
Well, that's good.
You
That's
know.
good. That's good. I think she's as big a villain as Koresh in that whole
Agreed.
story too.
Yeah.
Things are complicated.
Very
The
complicated.
government
Absolutely.
shows up with a bunch of tanks and shit. All they're doing
Yep.
is escalating the fucking situation.
Everyone's
kidding.
got a job to do.
Listen to Bill Hicks's recordings from around that period. Like he
Yeah.
went down there and had a really like reasonable like, why the fuck are they doing this? You know.
Yeah.
Yeah, that could have it would have eventually played itself out or whatever.
Exactly.
But that's a whole other hour.
Exactly.
I want to thank both of
Sure.
you for making the trip down here. We're in the south corner of South San Jose.
was
It's a
fun.
pleasure.
It was fun.
And it was
Pleasure.
is nice to meet you in person. I feel like first of all, you process your voice on your show.
I really don't like. I mean,
Or-
I run some basic EQ stuff and but it's not like heavily processed or anything. It's a pretty light treatment. I have a very good microphone, but
And I'll have to listen back to this
Yeah.
too. Maybe it's just the difference between like a
I think
recorded sound versus
my voice sounds very different when you hear it back than
Yeah.
It's not bouncing off of a
Exactly.
vinyl behind you, et cetera,
Right,
et cetera.
yeah.
So
No.
and Dan, it was good to meet you too.
Likewise, nice to meet you. I mean,
maybe we can all go grab a beer or something when I move up to the East Bay sometime.
I'd be happy
that would be
to.
great. Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
well, we're gonna drive home to Area 51, but you know, after
Yeah.
this,
I mean, but you could meet me in Alameda where you pretend to live.
oh yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
That's your home base,
Alameda
not your moon
51.
base.
Yeah.
Alameda 51.
And I'm so pleased we actually saved my favorite song from the entire rock opera for last.
And
Which
you know
is,
what I'm pleased at is that we're only 5 minutes over time, which is amazing.
Okay.
That's awesome.
That's fucking
Just
amazing.
cut whatever he said most of the time.
Yeah, exactly. It was mostly. Yeah.
I'll just cut myself out. Fuck it.
This one's called Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars, and I feel like if you're listening to the actual rock opera, it kind of drops like a bomb. So I hope you guys like it. We're playing it live. Come see us at the Fireside Lounge on June 21st at 9 p.m.
Show up
It's
at
going to be
8:30.
fun. Yeah, show up.
Yeah.
Show up.
And tip your
You should
bartender.
camp out now. I mean, who
Yeah, I
knows
mean-
if Ticketmaster is going to run out of tickets?
Yeah,
Like, you don't know.
always tip your bartender and keep an eye on your friends while you're out because shit happens while you're out. That's one of
Absolutely.
the things because we do our shows about local music and the local music
Yep.
scene and keep an eye on your friends.
I want the
Absolutely.
government to see all the phones they track in the same bar.
That's right. Fucking great. Thank you guys so much again. This is a lot of fun. And
Cheers,
if
thank
this
you.
ends up being the last episode of this Local Love podcast, it seems like the perfect crossing of the streams where
Aw,
it,
thank
where it
you.
leads people into my other content.
By the way, if you listen to this show, please tell us when you show up.
Yep. Please do. Then you could, I don't know, maybe I'll send these guys with some Local Love stickers to maybe hand out at the,
Awesome.
show.
Absolutely.
All right. This has been Local Love episode 200 and fuck. I don't know.
Woo!
And this has been the Paranoid Strained Orchestra. And this is, would you say Silent Weapons?
For Quiet Wars.
Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars.
the goth DJs and Twitch witches are hanging out on Thursday for the bad VHS rips, unblinking eyes, and fire by night. Thetans and Satans comes from an interest in the cult of Scientology, moral panics, Satanism, and how they set the tone for the extremist social media panics of today. We really earn our Weird Left Twitch badge with this show, watching the world go red light in reverse every Thursday at 9 p.m. Pacific on twitch.tv/echoplexmedia. Find our full schedule at echoplexmedia.com.